Greetings and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Morton. What began as a persistent cough for our guest led to a diagnosis of lung cancer. But because she insisted on getting the problem checked out in full, she survived. She is Lori Shipman of Wayzata, Minnesota. She took the bull by the horns and hopes that if you or if somebody you know is put in that same position, that you or they will respond in the same way. So now let's hear Lori tell her story. And Lori, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Hi, thanks for having me, Bruce.
Now, we want to start off the way we always start off, and that's here to hear a little bit more about you, your life outside of cancer. So if you would, Lori, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do for work, and when time allows, what you do for fun.
Sure. So I am married. I have 3 grown, college-age kids, so life is a little busy for us right now. Grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I'm from the East Coast, and grew up there, went to school at Penn State, and then went to Florida for my first job, and have kind of moved around the country a little bit. My husband is from Minnesota, so we've been back here for just about 18 years here in the Minneapolis area. What I do for work, I'm an HR professional, so human resources is my field I've always been involved with. And I have my own HR consulting practice right now, so I help clients with all things HR related. And I guess a little bit on the fun side, what I love to do, Minnesota is a very outdoorsy state, so we spend a lot of time outside. I love to kayak. The lakes are a big part of our life, so boating, jet skis, kayaks, paddle boards, anything to be on the water, and hiking, going for walks. I used to swim competitively with the master's program, and I really enjoy yoga, and cooking is probably another big passion area.
And what is your favorite type of cuisine?
Oh, doesn't matter to me. My family has some Italian roots, so we love to go back to all things Italian, but we love to try some really diverse, different recipes and try them out and try different cookbooks. And we actually put together our first family cookbook this last holiday season, so that was a super fun project to do.
Now, I have to tell you, it wasn't for a very long time, but I briefly lived in Pittsburgh myself, and I know that a lot of people who live there have a certain accent. It sounds like you lost your accent.
I can say yins and downtown, right up the house. It all comes back pretty easily.
And is a toilet or is it a commode?
Oh, I think it was a toilet there.
Okay, well, in Western Pennsylvania, I heard commode quite a bit.
Oh,
and
okay.
Now that we've cleared that up, we'll move along here. Now, I have to ask you, what it sounds like with all the outdoorsy stuff you do, it sounds like you were living a pretty healthy lifestyle. Would you say that prior to your diagnosis, you were in pretty good health?
Absolutely.
And so it was a little abnormal when something didn't seem right from a health perspective. When did you first notice that something wasn't quite right?
Yeah, so I have an interesting story. My sister, my aunt, and I traveled to Florida in September of 2015, and we were down there to clean out my parents' home that was there. So it was very dusty, and the 3 of us were in that house for a couple of days. For some reason, I really did not do well in that environment there. I developed my cough there. My sister and my aunt did just fine, but it was really from that point in time on that I had this cough that just would not go away. But I really did not feel good when I was inside that home for the couple of days.
So what led you to seek medical attention?
Well, I didn't, probably like most people initially. I was a busy mom. I was working, I had kids. So I had a cough and kind of waited it out for a while through the fall, thought it would go away. Times it would seem to get a little bit better to me, and then other times it would be worse. And as the fall went on, I really didn't feel well overall. I was tired. This cough was really annoying. And it was right before Christmas when I finally just said, I need to go get this checked out. So I went to urgent care as my first stop.
And what happened after that?
So when I was there, they listened to me, my chest, and they said, yeah, there's definitely something, there. They took an x-ray. And I was diagnosed with pneumonia and put on prescription medicine and told to come back and, or follow up with my primary care doctor in a couple weeks. So I did a full round of the antibiotics, but it really didn't make a difference at all. So I did go back to the primary care doctor. They changed up the medicine, tried something different to hit it a little bit harder, told me to, let's just wait and see. But again, just still didn't feel well. And so I finally went back a third time. And that's when they said, let's just look a little bit further. And they ran the first CT scan, which is when they really saw something in my lung.
I'm guessing that there was still a lengthy chain of events between what you just described and your diagnosis. If you would describe that chain of events.
So it was a lengthy process. So it was the beginning of, middle of December when I went the first time. And it was the beginning of March when, they finally ran that CT scan to find something. Chain of events was, I didn't feel any better with each of the medication paths that they had tried with me. So, I'm a big advocate. You'll probably hear me say it a couple times, is just really listening to your body is so important. And if you don't feel well, you don't feel well. And if you're not getting improvement and results, you really have to just continue to advocate. And I think it would have been really easy for me to just, not do anything and wait it out and go longer and longer. And obviously with any cancer diagnosis, you want to catch it as quickly as possible. So really staying active in your healthcare is really, really important.
Okay, but what is the thing that happened that triggered your being told that you in fact had lung cancer?
Yeah, so again, it was not a clear-cut diagnosis. It was a roller coaster ride. So from there, I had the CT scan where they said, hey, something showed up on here. We're not sure what it is. We are sending you to a pulmonologist. So I, had to schedule that appointment, went in to see the pulmonologist, went through all of the history. And at that point in time, I do remember having the conversation with the pulmonologist because we have an active lifestyle. And we had been in Arizona and the Grand Canyon area the year before. So he really probed hard about, where were you and what kind of experience was that? And he thought maybe I contracted some type of odd fungus that was out there. So we kind of went down that pathway a little bit. But at one time I can remember saying to the pulmonologist, because he said, we're going to check from this list. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. And I said to him, what's at the bottom of the list? And he said, no, Lori, we're not going to talk about what's at the bottom of the list. I have a lot of things I want to check with you and I want to be really thorough. And I said, yeah, but I really kind of want to know what's at the bottom of the list. And that's when he shared with me for the first time. He said, well, the last thing we'll look for might be lung cancer. He said, but you don't have any of the signs that we should even be concerned about that right now. So let's go through our list and check off all these boxes. So again, just, treated for different types of infections. Everything came back negative on all of those tests. And so I was scheduled for a bronchoscopy. And again, the pulmonologist was fully anticipating that something odd was going to show up in there. And, I got the call that everybody doesn't want to hear, when the pulmonologist called and said, I'm so sorry to tell you, but it's adenocarcinoma. I didn't even know what that word was at that point in time. I was alone when I received that phone call at home. My kids were all at school. My husband was working. So it's a scary place to be to get that news. I did have my primary care doctor who called me immediately, probably within 20 minutes of getting that phone call. And he was very helpful in just explaining to me what it was, giving me some more information, and a place to at least to start to process what this could possibly mean. I actually got that call probably about 3 days before we were leaving for spring break. My kids at the time were 17, 16, and 14. So, we were in the throes of high school and everything. We had a big spring break trip planned down to Florida, and we got that call. And your immediate thing is, well, do we go? Do we not go? Like, do I do something today? Do I do something tomorrow? Everything just stops at the time that you get a call like that.
Well, obviously it's bad news. This much we know. It is a horrific bit of news to get. And there's no training manual in terms of telling those closest to you that you've got this bad news. So I suspect that you were sort of winging it when you shared this news with your husband and your family. How difficult was that?
It was very difficult to share that news. Again, it was such a shock as to what the diagnosis was, that even when you said it, I don't know that people really understood it at the time. Obviously my husband knew right away. We waited a day with the kids just because I had just received the news. Literally the bus was rolling through and, a half an hour with them coming home from school. And thankfully they were headed to a church event that night. Again, I just look at the blessings that happen in life. They were surrounded, with a lot of people of faith that night who became just rocks for them through this process. But yeah, obviously I had to tell the kids, and tell them the news of what this looks like. It was heartbreaking for them to hear. They were very scared. And of course, we didn't have a lot of answers at the time either. So the kids wanted to know, and we had lost my mom, their grandmother, a couple years before to breast cancer. So, in their mind, I'm sure they immediately equated, oh my gosh, mom's not going to make it in this process too. So it was very emotional time for all of us to work through it. And, each kid is so different in how they process that information. So I learned a lot about each of my kiddos in terms of how they communicate and, what's important to them. And, we've all learned a lot through this whole entire journey that we've been on together. But, it's hard. It's hard for kids to have to process this equally as hard for them as it was for me going through the challenges of it.
Well, speaking of challenges, now you've gotten the bad news, but what comes after that is the treatment. If you would describe what treatment was like for this particular diagnosis.
Well, okay, so the roller coaster continued for me. So I actually went to see a surgeon. They looked at it, and they weren't quite sure we were really looking at lung cancer. So again, it was back to yes, no, stop, go. We could wait and see. We could go in, what do you want to do? And at that point in time, I did decide to go get a second opinion, and was able to get seen down at the Mayo, which is, close to us here in Rochester, thankfully, and got in to see the Mayo, sent all of my records down there to them. But once they took a look at the slides, they said, absolutely, without a doubt, we know what we're looking at. We have seen this before. It is lung cancer, and we're going in to get it. So they had a very aggressive plan, which was surgery. And I should say, too, even though once I got the diagnosis from Mayo, there's still all these steps you have to go through to prep for surgery, other PET scans that they put you through and other tests that have to be done. So even though they say, yep, we're going in with surgery, then you still have to do all of these tests. And of course, there were flags that came up on those tests, which you just have to work through. And it's like, is this a go? Does this stop it? Does it not? And I remember meeting with my surgeon finally when she got all the tests back, and she said, no, Lori, we're going. And she said, we can do it in 2 weeks or something. And I said, no, you promised me once we got this news, we would go. And she said, all right, we'll do it tomorrow. And, we scheduled it very, very quickly. So mine was a lobectomy. It was my right lower lobe that they went in and removed. I had a very successful surgery. My margins were all clear, and I was staged at a 1A, which I know is very rare in the lung cancer world.
By the way, if you like what you hear on this episode, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast by checking on the links below. Once there, you will see a bell icon. If you click on that, we will notify you when we post a new interview. So we're talking about the surgery now, Lori, and of that, at your end as the recipient, the one going through this, what was the toughest part?
Probably coming out of surgery, out of lungs surgery. Breathing is difficult. You realize how much you breathe, how frequently you breathe. It's very painful. And, having drainage tubes in and things like that. So just those first couple days were pretty rough. And then coming home, it was just every day practicing gratitude, eating healthy, walking one step further, trying to stay ahead of the pain, surrounding myself with positive things, with family and friends and lots of love.
And in terms of the pain, describe just how severe it was, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, it was a 10 initially until they could get it under control. And I can remember laying there watching the clock, and minutes seemed like hours. Again, just trying to breathe and take breaths when you've had lung surgery initially. It's painful. Once they got the pain under control, it got a lot better.
Now, obviously, there's nothing pleasant about any form of cancer, but I want to throw a pleasant aspect into this story of yours, and that is the support that came from within your four walls. You just mentioned how your 3 kids were all different, and your husband's a different person. So did that eventually equate to 4 different versions of support?
It certainly did. And I actually have an aunt who is a nurse, and she actually came and stayed with me at the Mayo. Again, super thankful to have had her at my bedside as kind of my own personal nurse. But lots of friends and family that came to take care of me after the surgery, because kids had to go to school, people had to go to work. So it took a village, and very, very thankful to all of those people who were part of that part of my life.
And when did the pain start to taper off? When did you feel like you were inching your way back toward normalcy or survivorship?
Actually, what's amazing about the lung is the recovery process is, I guess, quick, I want to say. Within 6 weeks, I was back to work. I was walking. I was able to get back into the pool and swim again. I ran the 5K for a Breath of Hope in August, and I had my surgery in May. So the lung is an amazing organ in terms of how the body can heal and recover from that. So I don't know that there was a point in time. It was just every day it got a little bit better.
But I'm guessing there had to have been a point in which you saw survivorship as a reality. What was that like?
Yeah, I think that takes a while to get there on the journey. I can remember thinking, trying to put myself in the mindset, initially with the cancer diagnosis, I had a very hard time forward thinking or just planning for the future because I was so ingrained in just today. And I'm here today, and I'm thankful I'm here today, but I really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I've seen a shift in my mental state about that, of looking forward now. And I'm 5 years out from that now. So again, that window gets better and more hopeful every day, but that's a journey.
Now, I just want to clear up one little thing that you mentioned earlier, because you referenced it very briefly, and we're going to talk more about it in just a couple of minutes, but you mentioned a Breath of Hope. A Breath of Hope is a Breath of Hope Lung Foundation, which is based in the Twin Cities, Wayzata to be specific, right near where you live. And we want to talk a little bit more about that. I have interviewed some people who are part of the Breath of Hope family. And Lori, what I've heard from them is, and I know this is a theme with which you are familiar, is that you don't just snap your finger and get screened for lung cancer. I'm a prostate cancer survivor, and I didn't have to do a thing. I found out that I was a candidate for prostate cancer because of just normal blood work. I didn't have to ask anybody to do anything. But it's almost a completely different story within the lung cancer experience. Now that you know, obviously, what you went through, but you also know what other people in the lung cancer community have gone through, to what degree are you, what's the right word? Are you saddened, frustrated, angry at how difficult it is to ascertain that information? Even in your case, you didn't get it right away. You had to go through a few steps to get it. And for other people, it's even more difficult because by the time they find out they have lung cancer, they're stage 3 or stage 4.
Right. Yeah, it is frustrating when you look at the statistics. Lung cancer kills more people than breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colon cancer combined, but yet you just don't hear it talked about. And so the awareness side of it, that you got to, again, anybody can get it. I never ever thought I would say the words that I had lung cancer. And, there's the whole stigma side that goes with lung cancer as well. So there is a lot there that we're working towards. But I would say it's very hopeful to see the progress that is being made. And one of the things we are very hopeful for in the research world is that there will be some type of screening, just like mammography or prostate, where, anybody can get screened for this, maybe when they hit 40 or at some threshold. Because we know that if we catch it early, the outlook is, the statistics are great, but we've got to catch it early, and lung cancer can be silent for a very long time.
Well, let's hope that day comes soon, because it can't come soon enough. And at this point, I want to ask you about A Breath of Hope, the Breath of Hope Lung Foundation. And first of all, Lori, how'd you find out about it?
Yeah, so that's a great story. When I was, when I heard the news, obviously my family knew about the diagnosis, but I really kind of shelled up to the outside world about it. I mentioned the stigma, I've never smoked. And so the first question initially people asked me was, I didn't know you smoked, or when did you smoke? And so that part of it was really hard. So I really kept the news to myself initially. But when I came out and kind of shared on Facebook that, I had this diagnosis, I've gone through the surgery, and kind of put it out there, I had a friend reach out to me who said, oh my goodness, I know somebody who had the exact same thing as you. I want to connect you to her. And again, I was kind of hesitant at first. I didn't know, but it ended up being somebody at A Breath of Hope. And I remember the day I met her, and it was like breathing in hope, literally, because she was able to point me towards people that had been in a similar situation to me. There was a support group there. There were resources available there, and I could start to educate myself and learn a lot more about lung cancer. And, I've become very involved with that foundation since then. But those people are just near and dear to my heart, because it provided a family and an area of safety to talk about something that it can just be difficult with the rest of the world.
Now, before we go any farther about A Breath of Hope, there is a web address for it. And if somebody watching or listening now would like to contact A Breath of Hope and learn more, what is that web address? abreathofhope.org. Very simply, it's all lowercase, and it's just one big word comprised of 4 words, abreathofhope.org. Now, continuing about A Breath of Hope, Lori, what are some of the things that A Breath of Hope can do for someone who either has been freshly diagnosed, or if they're in that twixt and tween stage in which they're told that lung cancer could be a possibility, but they're not yet diagnosed and they want to learn whatever they can about lung cancer? What are some of the things that A Breath of Hope can do for someone?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. So the one thing that they've put out in the last couple years is actually called a patient portal. And this portal is an amazing place to go for information. So when you get a diagnosis like this, right, the first thing everybody wants to do is, run out to the web and just start Googling. But there is so much information out there about lung cancer, and it can, if you're not looking at what truly is you, it can be really hard to hear or read some of the information that's out there. So this patient portal, like I said, has been a great resource that just went out a couple years ago. If you're looking for information just in general about lung cancer, the different kinds of lung cancers, the different type of treatment options that are out there, because we do know, if you have certain mutations, different treatment options work really well for this cancer. So being able to have a space where you can go that has really solid, good technology technical information, you're going to find that through the patient portal. So that would be number one. But number two, the support groups that are there, again, for anybody who's been recently diagnosed, another great way to just network with people that have, been in your shoes, and you can share stories. And then there's also resources available if people need help, with rides, getting to treatments, and just support in that way. That's available to patients as well. So they can find all of that on the website.
And whereas A Breath of Hope began as an organization that was sort of by and for the Twin Cities area, now with the pandemic and Zoom meetings like ours right now, I would guess that has expanded A Breath of Hope's reach exponentially, because somebody in Indiana or Arizona or Florida can access the services provided by A Breath of Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've actually, our director was at some international fairs, and so it's been highlighted there as well as a resource and a platform. So I would say A Breath of Hope is now around the globe. We've had people checking out that patient portal for information. And again, it's just a great spot to get some good, solid technical information.
Our guest is Lori Shipman of Wayzata, Minnesota. She is a survivor of stage 1A lung cancer. Now, Lori, you've talked about the swimming, the kayaking, the hiking, and some other things that I've probably left out in terms of the physical activities that you take on. Let me ask you at this point, is there anything today that you cannot do, anything today you can't do that you could do pre-diagnosis?
Not at all.
Well, that is fantastic news for anybody who's watching and listening, knowing that this type of outcome can be possible for them. So, Lori, at this point, we want to wrap things up, but whereas we start from the same place, we try to end from the same place as well. And what I'm asking you to do is put yourself in the place of the position of finding yourself in a private one-to-one audience with somebody who either has just been diagnosed with lung cancer, or again, if they're in that kind of interim twixt and tween area in which they've heard they might be diagnosed, but they haven't been diagnosed yet. If you had a chance to provide a message to that person, there might be a lot of points you want to bring up, but if there's one overarching point you would like to make to that person, what would it be?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I would love to say to that person. I would say take a deep breath. You're not alone. There's a lot of people who have walked this road before you. And I would say listen to your body. You are the biggest advocate for yourself to make sure you're getting the medical treatment that you need. Make sure you're gathering the information you need to make the best decision available to you.
All right, that is a wonderful overarching point. As you said, there are probably many others, but if there's one thing for someone to listen to, that certainly is a very good point, and something that they should take seriously and act on. Lori, you've had a tremendous story to share with us. We really appreciate it. Lots of good information. And one more time, if you would, give us that web address for A Breath of Hope. abreathofhope.org. Okay, that's very simple. And once there are numerous directions they can go in. Whoever logs on to that, numerous directions they can go in to find all manner of information in terms of helping one with their lung cancer journey. So, Lori, thanks so much for the time. Thanks so much for the story. Thanks for sharing with us.
Absolutely. Take care.
And that's going to wrap up this episode of Cancer Interviews. We hope what you heard can aid the cancer journey for yourself or a loved one. And as Lori said, in this cancer journey, you're not alone. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.